Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to break down a truly eye-opening April 2026 report by post-Libre economist Thorsten Mayer. Now, you've definitely seen the headlines, right? Artificial intelligence is here, it's taking over, and it's coming for our jobs. But what if I told you the vast majority of these supposed AI layoffs have absolutely nothing to do with AI? Seriously. Today, we are following a massive $650 billion money trail to uncover what's actually real and what is just a spectacularly well-crafted corporate illusion. Right out of the gate, we've got to talk about the terrifying headline number that literally has everyone talking. In just the first 4 months of 2026 alone, the tech industry saw 78,557 layoffs. And out of those sweeping cuts, a massive 47.9%, so nearly half, were publicly attributed by companies to artificial intelligence. If you take that number at face value, it looks like an absolute jobs apocalypse, completely driven by new technology. It paints this vivid picture of algorithms just directly pulling the chairs out from under tens of thousands of workers. Okay, let's dive into this, because here's where the story takes a massive, massive turn. While nearly 48% of layoffs are blamed on AI in public press releases, private survey data reveals something entirely different. Get this, only 9% of those companies actually report that AI replaced the work of the people they let go. You heard that right, just 9%. Talk about data whiplash, right? So we have this sheer mind-boggling contrast. You've got this massive chunk representing public AI-attributed layoffs, completely overshadowing that tiny little 9% slice of actual AI job replacement. So how do we reconcile this? This massive gap between corporate claims and workplace reality. Let me be clear, this isn't a rounding error, this is a chasm. And understanding exactly what lives inside this gap is, for sure, the most important tech story of the year. You see, the gap isn't some innocent measurement error. It's a deliberate choice. In a December 2025 survey, 59% of hiring managers actually admitted to choosing the AI as making us leaner framing for one very specific reason. It simply plays better with stakeholders than the ugly truth. Because think about it, the alternative is getting on an earnings call and admitting, hey, we missed our targets, our costs are way too high, and we have to let people go just to balance the books. That narrative gets punished by the market. The AI narrative, however, that gets applauded. Act 2. Decoding corporate PR. To really understand the motive here, we just need to look at April 2026, when Meta and Microsoft announced 20,000 combined job cuts. Both of them touted AI-driven efficiency while simultaneously reporting massive increases in capital expenditures. Why? Well, and this brilliantly illustrates the point. The AI framing is basically the holy grail of corporate PR. Look at the two paths a company can take. If you announce the AI layoff, the stock market rewards your forward-looking transformation, severance liabilities might even be reduced, and the CEO looks like a bold visionary. But if you announce layoffs due to weak demand, the stock tanks, activist investors start circling, and the CEO looks like they've totally lost control of the ship. So yeah, the AI narrative is doing some heavy financial lifting. But hey, we don't just have to take the hiring manager's word for it. We can actually test this. The National Bureau of Economic Research ran a counter-test back in February 2026. Think about it. If AI was really doing the work of those fired employees, productivity and revenue per remaining employee should absolutely skyrocket, right? Because the machines are doing the heavy lifting. But the NBER data shows a 0% productivity gain in 90% of these firms. Output per dollar is barely moving. The test fails. AI isn't doing the work is just gone, or it's being piled onto the exhausted remaining staff. Act 3. Follow the capital. Now brace yourself for this next number, $650 billion. That is the projected 2026 AI infrastructure capital expenditure committed by just the big four, Amazon, Meta, Google, and Microsoft. They are buying servers, building colossal data centers, and hoarding graphics processing units like there's no tomorrow. This isn't just a big investment. This is literally the largest CapEx cycle in the entire history of the technology sector. And well, it has to be funded somehow. So how do you actually pay for a $650 billion shopping spree? Companies have a 3-step order of preference. Step 1 is operating cash flow, using the money you already make. It's the cleanest way, but even for tech giants, it has its limits. Step 2 is debt issuance, borrowing the money. But with interest rates sitting above 5%, borrowing is incredibly expensive and super unattractive right now. That leaves step 3, margin expansion via labor reduction. When the cash runs out and debt is way too expensive, cutting human payroll is quite literally the only way left to buy those shiny new AI servers. So the crucial point is perfectly summarized by this quote from a tech sector finance analyst in March 2026. They said,
payroll is functioning as a mechanism to self-fund AI infrastructure without damaging financial results. The AI narrative is just a smokescreen. It provides the brilliant political cover needed to secretly turn everyday operational expenses, meaning human salaries, into capital expenditures, massive server farms, all without upsetting Wall Street.
Act 4, where AI is actually replacing jobs. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is when we map out that 9% of actual displacement, a very clear pattern emerges. 35% of the real cuts are in Tier 1 customer support using LLMs. 25% are junior software engineers, getting replaced by code completion and adjacent assistants. Then you have content production at 20%, data entry at 15%, and generic IT ops at 5%. What do all these have in common? A very high degree of task standardization. If the job is highly repetitive and standard, well, AI is actually stepping in. But take a breath and look at the untouched categories: senior software engineering, sales engineering, account management, legal, finance, HR, executives. If you are sitting in one of these complex, highly contextual roles, you can absolutely breathe a little easier. For these roles, AI augmentation is incredibly real. Like, you'll definitely use AI tools to do your job better. But the empirical evidence for AI actually eliminating these roles, it's currently paper thin. However, this creates a massive structural danger for the economy. We call it the entry-level barrier. The roles that AI is actually replacing, the junior engineers, Tier 1 support, basic content creation, these are the historic on-ramps to a solid mid-career salary. Without these junior roles, the workforce ladder is completely losing its bottom rungs. Think about it. How do you get a senior software engineer in 2030 if you don't hire any junior software engineers in 2026? And this leads directly to what we're calling the senior premium. Because the junior pipeline is thinning out, that top 90th percentile senior talent is becoming incredibly scarce. As a result, compensation at the very top is rising, while median tech wages are completely flattening out. We are witnessing a fundamental bargaining power reset right before our eyes. Everyday human labor is genuinely struggling to negotiate against increasingly cheap capital substitution. Unionizing might protect against management, sure, but it's really hard to bargain against a server farm that works 24/7 without taking a coffee break. Section 5. Navigating the gap. So what do we do about all this? Well, here are the strategic actions required right now. First, chief financial officers absolutely must stop using the AI catch-all. If you are cutting jobs to reallocate capital, just name it. Be honest. Hiding behind AI accumulates expensive trust debt with your remaining employees. Second, corporate boards must step up. They need to demand verifiable productivity math before approving these AI-branded layoffs. If revenue per employee isn't moving, AI didn't do it, plain and simple. Finally, HR leaders must track their internal reality versus the public narrative. Knowing your actual gap is absolutely crucial for maintaining your employer brand in the long run. And that brings us to the ultimate question you really need to ask yourself today. Which side of the AI gap is your job sitting on? Now, Thorsten Mayer points out that this is a temporary equilibrium. By 2027, as agentic AI gets smarter and more capable, that 9% of real replacement will likely grow to 25 or even 35%, and the corporate narrative will actually start to match reality. But right now, today, the gap is the whole story. You need to look closely at your role, your tasks, and your company's balance sheet to know if your job is actually being automated by an algorithm or if it's just being sacrificed to fund the next giant server farm. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.